Welcome to Security Update. My name is Ramande Shawulu. Today's edition, we are going to discuss and look at the ever-deepening and widening security challenges in several parts of Nigeria and the wider Sahel region. We will look at the data, what they reveal, and the implications of the happiness and project whether the future will be better or not. And we would like to introduce a newsletter for those who are interested in the security challenges in Nigeria without wanting to sit for long to watch a video or have something that they can make reference to without going to YouTube. And if you are interested in becoming one of the recipients of the newsletter, we'd like you to go over to our website. I'll put the address on our description in there.live, and you add your email address there so that each time we have a newsletter, we will send the newsletter to you. And of course, you can see we're not recording from our usual studio. We are out on funeral that is taking place in Kaduna State, and we have used the opportunity of being here to record this session of our security update because you need to know what is happening in Nigeria. I will start from Kaduna State. A major attack was reported in Kaduna during the early hours of Monday, 27th July 2026. Armed men invaded Naridon village in Kauru Local Government Area shortly around or before midnight. Residents said that the attackers opened fire on people in their homes and set buildings ablaze. At least 30 people were reportedly killed. The victims included, as usual, women, elderly residents, and 8 children. And at least 4 people also sustained injuries. No armed organization has claimed responsibility at the time of reporting, and the identity and motive of the attackers has not been officially established. The casualty figure that we have came from residents and community representatives rather than complete government investigations. Reuters and the Associated Press independently reported the attack after speaking with local sources. Residents said that security personnel arrived in the area several hours after the attackers had withdrawn. The Kaduna State Police Command acknowledged reports of the incident and indicated that further details will be provided, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu subsequently condemned the attack and directed security agencies to identify and apprehend those responsible. However, no confirmed arrests, militant casualties, or rescue operations had been announced as at July 30th. The delayed arrival by security agencies, as reported by the residents, has also been claimed by many communities that are attacked. They usually complain that security agencies don't come in time and usually come when the attackers had withdrawn. This raises questions about whether earlier incidents generated permanent security measures, early warning systems, or rapid response arrangements, or these are clearly still missing. And in Abuja, yet another senior military officer has been killed. The senior military officer, Colonel Abdusalam Odey, a serving officer of the Nigeria's Defense Intelligence Agency, was killed after armed men attacked his residence in Kurudu on the night of Monday, July 27, 2026. The Defense Intelligence Agency confirmed that the incident occurred at approximately 10:45 p.m. at the Phase 5 Army Housing Estate. The initial report said that the attackers attempted abducting the officer, who fought back and was shot during the confrontation. The wife of the officer and his driver were also reported to have sustained injury. The attackers escaped and no arrest has been made yet. This incident, of course, is a major incident because the officer is a senior military officer still serving, and his death or killing raises questions about surveillance, access control, and protection within residential area that is gated and has military protection. Of course, the security agencies are yet to establish whether it was an opportunistic attack or that the colonel was directly targeted. Of course, the killing raises some questions which should be examined at two levels. The first is the immediate criminal investigation. Who planned the attack? How did the gunmen enter and leave the estate that is gated and has military personnel at the gate? Did they possess prior information about the officer's movement? Were they monitoring his residence? What was the objective of the kidnapping? Was it for ransom, or was the officer specifically marked for assassination? The second is institutional security. How secure are military residential estates? The entrances monitored, visitors' record kept, emergency units stationed close enough to respond to armed incursions? And was there any intelligence indicating that senior military personnel were being targeted? Of course, this incident challenges the assumption that senior security personnel are protected simply because they live in military or government-associated residential areas. It reinforces a wider pattern in the abduction of the Kebbi High Court judge. Criminal groups appear increasingly willing to target officials connected to the institutions responsible for security and justice. The second analytical question, of course, is when armed groups attack a military intelligence officer inside an army housing estate, the question is no longer whether insecurity has reached the capital. The question is how deeply it has penetrated the capital's protective systems. Although different, the attacks in Kaduna and Abuja reveal two different but connected weaknesses. In Kaduna, a rural community reportedly waited hours for security personnel to arrive. In Abuja, armed men penetrated a residential environment associated with the military and escaped after killing a senior intelligence officer. One incident exposes the vulnerability of remote communities. The other exposes vulnerabilities close to the center of national power. Now we'll move to Kebbi State, when the judiciary becomes a target. One of the most disturbing developments came from Kebbi State. On July 26, 2026, suspected bandits reportedly abducted Justice Faruku Hassan, serving judge of the Kebbi High Court, from his residence in Bunza. At the time of the initial reports, no deaths were officially confirmed in connection with the abduction. Police and other security agencies were said to have commenced search and rescue operations. However, the judge's location, the identity of kidnappers, and any ransom demand had not been publicly confirmed. This distinction is important. The abduction itself was reported by multiple sources, but details surrounding the operation remained preliminary until the police, the judiciary, or the victim's family issue any statement. What we have in the public domain remain largely speculations about the motive of the kidnapping and whether it was for some reasons or for ransom also. The kidnapping of a judge is not simply another abduction. Judges occupy a central position in the administration of justice. They hear kidnapping, terrorism, murder, and organized crime cases. When a judicial officer can be seized from his home, the attack carries implications beyond the immediate environment. It also raises questions about the protection of judges, the prosecution, witnesses, and court officials involved in sensitive cases, even though we do not know the reasons for which this judge was kidnapped. And in Borno State, the military reported a potentially significant development. According to the Nigerian Army, a senior Boko Haram or ISWAP financial official surrendered to troops along the Ladara-Jegarawa axis. The military said troops recovered one AK-45 rifle, 4 magazines, 110 rounds of ammunition, and a motorcycle, as well as 40,000 naira. No casualties were reported during the surrender. The 3 individuals were taken into military custody for interrogation, profiling, and processing. The immediate temptation is to assume this as simply another surrender. But more important issue is the alleged role of the individual. A financial operative possesses knowledge that an ordinary operative or fighter may not have. He may understand how insurgents raise money, move cash, task communities, purchase supplies, compensate informants, and acquire motorcycles, fuel, and maintain communication networks. ISWAP has reportedly demonstrated that insurgency is not sustained by weapons alone. It depends on a system of taxation, logistics, trade, smuggling, and coercive control over communities. And the possible intelligence that the military could get from the surrender will be the taxation systems, arms procurement, fuel and supply chains, couriers and financial facilitators, informant networks, payment to fighters, links to local markets. This is why the success of the operation should eventually be measured. The surrender led to the arrest of additional financiers, where supply routes disrupted, where cash reserves or communication networks identified. Did communities previously paying taxes, insurgents receive protection? A surrender is valuable if answers are provided to all these questions. And without the answers to these questions, the arrest may be of no relevance to the fight against insurgency in Nigeria. And of course, the good news, one of the challenges that the Nigerian military has had over the years that has been demonstrated by most analysts and commentators on the Nigerian security system is that the security personnel, especially the military, is not just underfunded, and the underfunding leads to problems of low personnel and so forth. Now, the federal government has approved a major expansion of the Nigerian army. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu authorized the recruitment of additional 28,000 personnel and the establishment of 4 new army divisions. They propose divisions to be located in Makurdi, Ilorin, Jalingo, and Benin City. The initial formation are expected to become operational between September and December this year. The locations of these formations appear very significant. Makurdi sits in the middle belt where communities face armed attacks, farmer header violence, kidnapping, and displacement. Ilorin is close to the Kwara-Kainji corridor, an area increasingly discussed in relation to bandit movement and militant infiltration, as well as the reported activities of the Lakurawa, the group that is associated with the Al-Qaeda that operates in the Sahel. Jalingo is positioned in Taraba State, a state affected by clashes, killings, of course, sits between Adamawa, troubled plateau, and the Republic of Cameroon. Benin City may provide a strong military structure for the South-South and part of the Southeast and Southwest. But of course, forming new divisions is the easy part. Division requires barracks, equipment, intelligence units, communications, vehicles, air support, training facilities, maintenance capacity, and consistent funding. Recruitment also raises questions about standards. How quickly can 28,000 personnel be properly screened and trained? Will the expansion reduce pressure on overstretched troops, or will it produce formations that exist administratively but lack the operational capacity to dominate and secure their territory? The experience of Nigerian security crisis suggests that troops' presence alone is insufficient. And of course, even the 28,000 addition is very insignificant and will just be like a drop in the ocean of needs. Nigeria will require a massive recruitment of, in my own opinion, up to at least 500,000 personnel in the next 5 years. And we'll move over to the police. The Nigerian police has also reported series of operations across 13 states and the Federal Capital Territory. According to the police, 112 suspects were arrested. 2 kidnapped victims were rescued. 3 firearms and 14 rounds of ammunition were recovered. 1 suspected kidnapper was reportedly killed. Among the notable incidents, police said an attack on Anyesi in Kwande Local Government Area of Benue State was repelled. 1 civilian was wounded. In Wamako, Sokoto State, 2 captives were reportedly rescued after a gun battle. In Jigawa State, police officers were seriously injured during patrol. And in Kebbi State, police responded to the killing of a council official and abduction of his wife. Well, as usual, everywhere in the world, national summaries can be useful, but they also hide important differences. An arrest for a cult violence in one state is not equivalent to an arrest for terrorism in another. A rescued kidnapped victim is not the same as a permanently dismantled kidnapping network. Weapons recovery figures are also difficult to interpret without context. Firearms may represent an important breakthrough in one investigation, but they are a small number compared to the volume of weapons circulating through criminal networks. The most useful question in this respect is how many suspects were charged, how many cases reached trial, how many suspects released because of weak evidence, and how many weapons can be traced to particular suppliers or particular crimes or trafficking routes. A recently reported assessment counted 882 violent incidents and at least 792 deaths across Nigeria in June 2026. The report also stated that security forces killed 274 suspected insurgents during the month. This figure suggests an average of almost 30 recorded incidents each day. However, the numbers require careful interpretation and clarification. They are based on secondary reporting and may be revised. Incidents are frequently underreported, especially in communities with limited communications or media access. And the most serious long-term consequence of the insecurity that we have in Nigeria today may not occur during the attacks themselves. They later appear in empty farms, abandoned villages, closed markets, and rising food prices. The World Food Program says approximately 6.2 million people are now facing food insecurity across Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe State. Available resources are reportedly sufficient to assist only about 740,000 people. This leaves an estimated 5.5 million people without planned humanitarian support. This does not mean that every person outside the program will immediately face starvation, but it demonstrates the scale of unmet needs. The crisis is driven by several connected factors. Farmers cannot cultivate land controlled or threatened by armed groups and bandits and terrorists. Road insecurity raises transport costs, displacement removes families from their livelihoods, and markets may operate just intermittently. And of course, we do know that humanitarian agencies are facing funding cuts and restriction on access. A newly updated atrocity risk assessment classified Nigeria as a current crisis. The assessment cited Boko Haram, ISWAP attacks, bandit violence, and danger of civilian casualties arising from military air operations. This is a sensitive but necessary aspect of security reporting. The state has the responsibility to protect citizens from armed groups. It also has the responsibility to ensure that its own operations distinguish between combatants and civilians. Nigeria has experienced previous incidents in which air operations were followed by allegations of civilian casualties. The consequences extend beyond the immediate deaths. Civilian harm damages public trust, creates anger, and may make communities less willing to share intelligence with security agencies. And in the wider Sahel region, there's war going on in Mali over roads, fuel, and movements. Across the Sahel, the security crisis continues to evolve. In Mali, for instance, updated security assessment indicate that the Al-Qaeda-linked Jamaat Nasrul Islam wa al-Muslimini, commonly known as the JNIM, has established checkpoints and roadblocks on important highways. Fuel trucks, transport routes have reportedly been targeted, including roads connected to Bamako, the capital. No single consolidated casualty figure has been provided for these road disruptions. Malian forces have continued road clearances and counterinsurgency operations, while foreign governments have advised against overland travel. The strategic significance is clear. An armed group does not need to capture a city to weaken a government. It can block fuel, attack transport vehicles, force traders to pay levies, and make roads too dangerous for ordinary movement. This raises food prices, reduces government revenue, and creates a perception that the state controls cities, but not the territory between them. JNIM and other armed groups have also carried out or claimed attacks on military positions in places like Anefis, Agelok, Gao, Saveri, and Keniroba. Malian authorities reported that dozens of attackers were killed in some operations. Many of these claims remain very difficult to independently verify. And the governments of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have deepened military cooperation through the alliance of Sahel states. Russia has also expanded security partnerships with these governments. The central argument of the Sahel military government is that stronger military cooperation will help defeat jihadist groups and restore sovereignty. But the available data present a troubling picture. Conflict monitors have reported substantial civilian deaths attributed not only to jihadist groups but also to state forces and allied militias. The precise figure varies by data set and methodology, but the broader warning is consistent. Counter-insurgency operations that kill civilians can deepen resentment, increase displacement, and help armed groups recruit. Foreign weapons advisors and military partnerships should be assessed using the following outcomes: attacks declining as civilians serve, reopening. Is the state regaining durable control? Without these results, military operations may increase firepower without resolving the political and social conditions that sustain insurgency. Why does the Sahel, of course, matter to Nigeria? This is the question that people have asked. Nigeria cannot treat the Sahel crisis as a distant conflict. The country shares a long border with the Republic of Niger. Weapons, fighters, livestock, fuel, commercial goods move across interconnected regional routes. Instability in Mali, Burkina Faso can place additional pressure on Niger, which may in turn affect northwestern Nigeria. This does not mean every bandit group in Nigeria is controlled by a Sahelian jihadist organization. That claim would be inaccurate. Nigeria's insecurity involves distinct actors: bandits, communal militias, criminal kidnapping networks, Boko Haram faction, ISWAP, Lakurawa, and other armed groups. But these groups can interact, and it's possible may be interacting. They may trade weapons, exchange information, use the same smuggling routes, or temporarily cooperate. The strongest security approach is therefore regional. Nigeria needs border surveillance, intelligence sharing, financial monitoring, and cooperation with neighboring states. But regional cooperation must be balanced with civilian protection and respect for local communities whose livelihoods depend on cross-border trade. Closing borders indiscriminately may damage legal commerce while illegal networks find alternative routes. The objective should therefore be smarter borders, not simply harder borders. The current security picture emerging this week is not that of a single crisis. It is a collection of interconnected crises. In Kebbi, the abduction of a judge and the killing of a local government official showed the vulnerability of state institutions. In Borno, the reported surrender of an ISWAP financial operator may offer important intelligence on insurgency financing. Across Nigeria, police and military cooperation continues to produce arrests, rescues, and weapons recoveries. Yet the national data still point to hundreds of deaths every month. The government's decision to recruit 28,000 soldiers and create 4 new army divisions may strengthen the military. But the expansion may not produce visible civilian outcomes. That is, safe roads, protected farms, reopened schools, successful prosecutions, reduced displacement, and fewer families forced into anger. Across Mali and wider Sahel, armed groups are fighting not only for territory but also for control of movements, roads, fuel, and public confidence. I am Remande Shawulu. Thank you for watching Security Update.